What I have is that we have our Venmo eligible QR codes around, and we have over there. You will be getting all the information about the events we're going to be holding in the upcoming future.
Okay.
With that, I would like to have Sheikh Mahdi Rastani. Please take remember Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala
Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And please, I will request the brothers, please, everyone, come on forward, all right? You have a lot of space up here, so please come on forward.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. One more salawat, please. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ولا على الذين إذا ما أتوك لتحملهم قلت لا أجد ما أحملكم عليه تولوا وأعينهم تفيض من الدمع حزنا ألا يجدوا ما ينفقون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a second loud salawat. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight, inshallah, is given the title, The Power of Intention. Intention is something that has been emphasized quite a bit within the religion of Islam. And it's a topic we might have heard about from different perspectives. And tonight, inshallah, we'll try to discuss it from a unique perspective. And that is the power that the human being carries with himself because of the intentions that he can make in his life. This is something that on one hand in our communities is very much underestimated. At other times, it is overestimated. There are times where you'll find a person, someone else, or yourself maybe even, this person will do hundreds of good deeds and hundreds of acts of worship and will live his life for 20, 30 years. After 20 or 30 or 40 years, he might look back and realize that all of these acts of worship that he did, for example, may have not been done with the right intention. He might have been doing everything for the wrong reasons. This is a person who underestimated the importance of niyyah. He underestimated the role that intention can play in his acts of worship. Then you will find there are those on the other side who will then overestimate the role of intention. They will overestimate what intention means for their faith. People of this sort, at times they will tell you, they will say, listen, the only thing that matters in religion is for you to have a good heart and good intentions and a pure heart, practicing the religion. I don't know, doing this, doing that. Eating halal versus haram. Your clothing is najis or tahir. Your salat is doing properly or not. This stuff doesn't matter, this person will tell you. See, at the end of the day, what Islam wants from us is to be good people at our hearts. As long as you have good intentions, that's all that Islam cares about. That's all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cares about, is what this person will tell you and I. And in order to prove their point, in order to prove their statement, this person will quote a very famous hadith that goes like this: إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Truly, the only thing that determines the state of a deed is the intention behind that deed. This person will say, look, the Prophet has even told us that the only thing that matters at the end of the day, your intentions. Therefore, don't speak to me about praying 5 times a day with all of these details. Don't tell me fasting like this. Don't tell me hijab and dress code like this and like that. This stuff doesn't matter in Islam. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what? Have a pure intention, have a pure heart, and you're good to go. And I'm very familiar with this type of rhetoric because I come from a culture where this rhetoric is very common. You'll find many of my people, the Iranian people, they'll speak of this many times. They'll say, yes, doesn't matter. Practice the religion, not practice the religion. That stuff doesn't matter. Islam just wanted us to have a pure heart. This is a person who is overestimating the role and the value that niyyah and intention can have in his or her life. So tonight, inshallah, especially because these 2 or 3 nights that we are going through are nights where we actually make intentions to start to change things in our lifestyles, it's important for us to take our time to understand the power that an intention can bring into my life. And we will do that tonight, inshallah, by posing the following questions. Number 1, what is the importance that Islam has given to the issue of intention and niyyah? Number 2, why is it that when a person does a good deed, but he does this good deed for the wrong reasons, he does this good deed with the wrong intentions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not value this deed at all, even though in the materialistic world, that deed that he had committed has real life, effects and results. He might feed 1,000 poor people, for example. 1,000 poor people have been fed now, but he did it for the wrong reasons. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this deed has no value, has no results for him on the day of judgment? Number 3, how does a good deed or a bad deed that I don't get the opportunity to act upon, I don't even get the chance to make it happen, how does it affect my spirituality? Number 4, based on the hadith of our 7th Imam, when someone makes the intention to commit a wrong deed, how do the angels who are writing down the deeds realize that this person has made an evil intention, even if he doesn't get to act upon it? Number 5, if intention is so important and I have to make sure I'm doing everything with the right intention, how can I know if I am doing things with the right intention or the wrong intention? Is there a litmus test that I can go through to know whether I am doing it for the right reasons or not? And number 6, and finally, when we hear this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, the only thing that matters is your intention, does that mean the only thing that God cares about is me having a pure heart and pure intentions? Or is there a different interpretation of this statement that is meant by this hadith of our beloved Prophet? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Let's start from here. The human being is given a blessing. It is given a characteristic, an attribute that the other creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not given. And that is the characteristic of free will. When you look at the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find most of the creation of God doesn't have this free will. The plant is a plant, the cow is a cow, and the sheep is a sheep. They can't change who they are. The human being, on the other hand, can change things, and just all of that can happen very quickly. This human being carries with himself a power that the other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the most part, does not carry. Yes, you can include maybe jinn also in this discussion. Yes, when the Quran talks about jinn, interestingly enough, it's not some scary discussion of jinn flying around and scaring us. The Quran talks about jinn as if they're human beings many times. That's just another creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same way you woke up in the morning and you weren't thinking about messing around with the jinn wakes up in the morning, he's not worried about messing around with the human beings. At least most of them are living their lives. The jinn can also have this free will, and there could be other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we don't necessarily know about. Nobody is saying that it's only human beings, jinn, and angels. There might be other creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that we don't know about, and maybe they have free will. But putting all of that aside, at the end of the day, the main creation of Allah who has that free will is the human being. It's the human being that has been blessed with this characteristic. Because he has this free will, he can change his future and he can change his fate. All of that change, however, can happen in just one moment. One moment. If the human being decides in one moment to change his future forever, if he decides to change his fate for the thousands of years that he's going to live later on, he can do all of that in just 1 second. He makes one intention and all of it changes. And this is a power that you and I have that Shaitan doesn't want us to pay attention to. Shaitan wants you and I to think we're hopeless. Shaitan wants you and I to look at different things and say, this is too difficult, I can't do it. Shaitan wants you and I to look at things and say, well, I've always been like this, so I'm always going to be like this. I've always had this habit, so I'm always going to be like this. I've always committed this haram, so I'm always going to do this. He wants you to feel like you have no power at all, because he knows that if you make one intention, you can change your whole life forever. This is the power of intention. Zuhair ibn Qayn, companion of Imam Hussain, what happened to him? He had a conversation with Imam Hussain, yes? And there were many others who had conversations with Imam Hussain, but he made 1 second, one intention. And that changed his future forever. Zuhair ibn Qayn wasn't even supposed to be there. He wasn't supposed to be there. So history clearly tells us he was trying to avoid Imam Hussain. That's what history tells us. He was trying to avoid him. The Imam comes to this station, sets up his tent over here. Zuhair said, let's set up our tent over there. Let's not even get close to the son of Fatima. Why am I even spending time with the son of Fatima? Yes, this was the perspective of Zuhair ibn Qayn. One conversation, one moment of intention, and his future changed forever. And the reality is, you and I can do that as well. Here's the thing though, whenever you want to make an intention, whenever you want to change things in your life, the moment you actually start getting to that point where you want to get very determined and you want to tell yourself, you know what, I'm coming here and I'm commemorating Imam Hussein's Shahada. When I go back to my lifestyle, I'm going to change A, B, C, D, whatever the case may be. The moment you start saying this and the moment you hear the stories of Zuhair ibn Qayn, you will find that Shaitan all of a sudden will start whispering in your ears. He'll start having a conversation with you and with me. What is that conversation like? This is probably what he's going to tell you and me during these nights. He'll come to you and I and he'll say, you know that story the Sheikh was talking about, this Zuhair ibn Qayn guy he kept going on and on about? It's like, yeah, I heard the story. He says, that story, that's just for the lectures. That's not you. You're normal. You've done this sin for so long, you're going to continue doing this sin. Say, no, but Zuhair ibn Qayn, he changes it. Shaykh was talking about this. Yes, yeah, that's for the majalis. It sounds good, all that kind of stuff. You're not like that. You're not strong enough. You're not powerful enough. What? Now you're going to change your whole life all of a sudden? You ever see friends like that who pull you down? You're like, I'm going to go do this. Like, what? You? All of a sudden, you're going to become this successful person all of a sudden? They'll mock you sometimes, yes? Shaitan wants us to believe that as well. Why? Because he knows if you actually make that intention for 1 second, there is no stopping you. If you want to change your future, there's a lot of things I have to do. There's a lot of wajibat I have to start doing. There's a lot of muharramat or haram things I have to start staying away from. But all of it starts from one moment of intention. You make that intention, everything else follows. So Shaitan will try his best to stop you from getting there. Every time you sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to change things. No, not you. Who do you think you are? Say, but Zuhair ibn Qayn. Says, yeah, that's Zuhair ibn Qayn. When we want to tell someone that something is fake, it's not going to happen, what do we tell them? Says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. We say, you know what? That's for the movies. That's what we tell them, right? Shaitan will come to us and say, listen, this is for the majalis. He speaks, he sits up there and he speaks and that's it. And he might come to me and say, yeah, this is a story you tell, but deep down, it's not you. No, you're going to stay here with me. You're going to be my best buddy. We're going to be together forever. That's the way Shaitan wants to make it, yes? Because he knows if you make a moment of intention, there is no more stopping you. And interestingly enough, Shaitan will sometimes come to you with this trick of his. And he will say, listen, are you trying to make fun of this whole process of tawbah? Are you trying to mock God? So what do you mean, make fun of tawbah? Says, you've done tawbah before, haven't you? Say, yeah, I've done tawbah. You broke your tawbah, didn't you? Say, yeah, I broke my tawbah. So what, you think this is just a silly game? You just keep doing tawbah and breaking it? That's what he'll tell you. That's what he'll tell me. Because most of us, when we want to leave haram, for some, it might be an overnight decision. It's possible. For many of us, it might be something that takes time. So he'll come to you and say, well, you broke your tawbah before. You're probably going to do tawbah this time. You're going to break it again. What is this? You're making fun of God. Hey, tawbah, tawbah, tawbah. Every Muharram tawbah, every Ramadan tawbah, every Thursday night tawbah, every this. What is this? And what you and I need to tell him is 2 things. First of all, you and I have to realize when Shaitan comes and tells you, you're going to do tawbah again, what is this, a silly game to you? You have to realize Shaitan wants to make sure whatever sin it is that I have committed, you have committed, he wants you to not do tawbah at this stage so that he can take you further. You did a sin at level 1, whatever the sin might have been. If you don't do tawbah now, you know what you're going to do next time? You're going to do level 2 and level 3, level 4 and level 5. That's what he's thinking. He's thinking long term. But if you do tawbah right now, and it's a genuine one, and let's say, God forbid, you fall again, you're still stuck at sin level 1. Never went to level 3, 5, 6, because you stopping it at least. This is the role of tawbah. Yes, number 1. Number 2, how does Shaitan know so well? Maybe this time you do tawbah, you're able to keep this tawbah of yours. Don't let that make you lose all of your hope. No, you do tawbah. How do you know? Maybe this time I'm able to keep it. Therefore, we have to be very careful. Shaitan knows that if you make that intention, there is no more stopping you. That's why the hadith of the 6th Imam, salawatullahi alayhi, he says, "Ma da'ufa badanun." He says, there is no body that is weak. Amma qawiyat alayhi niyyah. There is no body of any human being that is too weak for that which the human being has put his mind to. If you decide to do something, you're going to make it happen one way or another. If you put your mind to it, you'll make it happen one way or another. Everything else follows once you make that moment of intention. Therefore, Shaitan will put all of the doubt of the world into your heart just to get you to not be that determined. Because he knows if you're really determined, there is no more stopping you anyways. This is the role of having an intention. This is the power of having an intention. And it goes beyond this because in Quran and Hadith we read that the one who has an intention to commit a good deed, this affects his spirituality. This affects his relationship with God, even if he doesn't end up actually committing that deed. The verses of the Quran tell us the battle of Tabuk was beginning. Battle of Tabuk was not like the other battles of the Prophet. Other battles of the Prophet, many of them were around Medina. They were close. Battle of Uhud, not too far away from Medina, for example. Yes? Badr, not too far away. Tabuk was much further away. So people had to get on horses, they had to get on camels, they have to make their way all the way to that area to then fight. It's a difficult situation. And the Quran, of course, is describing, people come, and some people, they used to come with excuses. Ya Rasulullah, I can't help you. He could have helped them, but he was making excuses. And the Quran says, fine, Ya Rasulullah, people like this, when they come, give them permission to stay, because if they come and become part of your army, they will bring more weakness to your army. Because in the path, they're going to be what? Talking the whole time. Why did he do this? Why did he do that? The Quran says, وَجَاءَ الْمُعَذِّرُونَ مِنَ الْأَعْرَابِ. The people who make a lot of excuses are coming. Give them permission to stay. They'll be held accountable for it because they were lying. But give them permission to stay. You don't want these guys in your group. And then the Quran says, and if those come to you who are weak, and those come to you who are old, and they're not able to come with you, Ya Rasulullah, know that we will reward them. And the narration says there was this old man who had gone blind, and he came to the Prophet with his staff, and he asked, Ya Rasulullah, I'm blind, I can't see. But if there's any way someone can come and take my hand and guide me on this path, and I can help you some way, I'll come. And the Quran says, مَا عَلَى الْمُحْسِنِينَ مِنْ سَبِيلٍ. We see the intention that you have made. We will reward you for that intention. You don't have to come, but your intention counts for us. And then the next verse talks about a group of people who came to the Prophet and they were crying. 7 people from Ansar, they came to the Prophet. Ya Rasulullah, we want to come to you. We want to come with you on this battle. But they said the problem we have is we have no animal, we have no horse, no camel to ride on. We're not wealthy. We don't have much. This is a long battle. It's very far away. If we want to come with you, everyone is riding something. And the Quran says, and there are those who come to you, Ya Rasulullah. They ask you for a ride. They want a ride so that they can join you in this battle. But you tell them that we're out of horses and camels. We don't have that many. And then the Quran says, تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ. Their eyes fill up with tears. حَزَنًا. They are so sad that they're not able to join you in part of this battle. And the Quran says, but their intention counts for us. We will reward them based on their intention. We see those tears. And very beautifully, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he had head out to go towards the Battle of Jamal. Battle of Jamal, hopefully we'll get another opportunity sometime to discuss the battles of our Imam. Battle of Jamal, such an important battle. So many theological implications in this battle. Fascinating piece of history. The Imam went out, and we know the Battle of Jamal, the Imam was victorious. It was a very difficult battle, but he was victorious at the end of the day. I really hope we get a chance to go through that battle, because the amount of, the dramatic moments in that battle are just so special. When the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib and the army of the other side, they're going back and forth, and that camel is in the middle, and the Imam points towards the camel and he says, we won't win this battle unless you get that camel to fall. It's very beautiful moments in the Battle of Jamal. This Battle of Jamal came to an end. Companion of the Imam came to him. He said, Ya Ali, I had a brother. He really wished he would be here with us. And the Imam asked him, he said, Ahawa akhika ma'ana? Was his heart with us? Did he really have the intention to be with us if he could have been here with us? He said, yes. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, he really wanted to be with us. He said, Laqad shahidana. He said, then he was here with us. But he wasn't. He was here with us. And then the Imam said a line that applies to you and I. Look at this line of the first Imam. And then he turned to his companion. He said, let me tell you something. Forget about your brother. There were people who joined us in this battle who are not even born yet. There are people who joined us in this battle who are still in the wombs of their great-grandmothers. They are still in the loins of their great-grandfathers, but they were here with us in the battle of Jamal. Why? Because they had the true intention to be there with the Imam. Imagine if you had a genuine intention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala counts it for you. And this is one thing I want to mention, that it brings a little bit of hope to us at the end of the day. You know, during these 10 nights, we talk about scary things a lot of time. We talk about the Day of Judgment quite a bit, talk about how difficult it's going to be, so on and so forth. Here's one of those things that we can remember. Hopefully it brings a little bit of hope to us. You never know what type of good intention you made that you never had an opportunity to act upon, and you forgot about it. Maybe it shows up for you on the Day of Judgment. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know what? You made that intention. You didn't get a chance to do it, but I counted it for you. You made that intention to go for ziyarah. It didn't work out. I counted it for you. You made the intention that if you were wealthy, you would give this much times, charity, for example. But you never got that wealthy and you forgot about it. But I remembered, and it's part of your acts of worship for you today. You never know. This is a little bit of hope for you and I. You never know. These intentions that we make, you might be driving somewhere, someone else is driving, you're in the car, you say, you know what? If I had this, I would do this for God. Never know. Maybe that intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings it on the Day of Judgment. Because the hadith says on the Day of Judgment, servants of God will show up and they will be presented with their book of deeds. And the hadith says this person will take a look at his book of deeds, flip through these pages. In my words, it doesn't really have pages, but just so we understand it. He flips through these pages. He says a bunch of things he never did. And the hadith says he turns to Allah. He says, Ya Allah, this is not my book of deeds. I didn't do any of these. And the call comes back to him and says, Sadaqtum, you are right. You never did them. But nawaytumuha, but you did the niyyah to do them. So I wrote them all down for you. This is a little bit of hope for us. You never know. One intention you make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you, even if you don't get a chance to actually make it happen. Recite a salawat, please. This is on the good side. On the other side, if I make a wrong intention, an evil intention, I don't even get a chance to act upon it. Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala count this? Most scholars will say no. Predominantly scholars will say no. You didn't get a chance to act upon it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not count it. But one thing is for sure, it definitely hurts your relationship with Him. It definitely starts to mess with your spirituality. 100%. There's no doubt about this. And this is beautifully explained in the hadith of the 7th Imam. Salawatullahi alayhi. In the hadith of the 7th Imam, his companion asked him, said, Ya ibna Rasulullah, how do these angels find out what someone is doing a wrong intention? If he's doing a wrong deed, well, they see him. Okay, khalas, they see him, they write it down, and so on and so forth. But if he makes the intention and never makes it happen, how do these angels figure out that he had this wrong intention? And Imam al-Qadim asked him a beautiful question. He said, let me ask you something. When you pass by somewhere where there is human waste, bathroom, things of that nature, can you tell the difference between the smell there and other places? I said, yes, of course. Especially back in the day, it's very clear, yes? I said, of course, there's a huge difference. He said, when a servant of God makes that wrong intention, there is a smell that leaves his body, similar to the smell of that bathroom, similar to the smell of that place that has that type of waste. It says the moment he makes this intention, the angels immediately realize. And the angel on the left-hand side who's going to put down the wrong deeds, he gets ready to write because you've already made the intention. And the angel on the right says, hold on for a second. He hasn't done it yet. He may never do it. But does it affect my relationship with Allah? 100%. 100%. My intentions, our intentions, they are very powerful. And of course, when we say intentions, I want to be clear. We're not talking about thoughts that cross your mind. Thoughts cross our mind all the time. Na'udhu billah, sometimes these thoughts are not the best thoughts either. No, intention. I'm going to do this. Or the vice versa of it. I'm not going to do this. I know I have to pray, but I'm not going to do this. That moment you make that intention, the angels, they immediately realize this. If this is how important it is to have the right intention, this brings us to the next question. If someone does a good act of worship, but without the right intention, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give any value to this deed? I'll give you an example. Sometimes you'll find, for example, corporations give thousands of dollars in charity. Politicians, thousands of dollars in charity. But when you get down to the actual reason why this person did it, you'll find, for example, he might have did it because of the publicity, the tax, breaks, so on and so forth. Or you might think of yourself and myself, we do something for the wrong reason. Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this has no value at all? At the end of the day, it made a difference in the real world. This corporation that gave money, did it help a bunch of people? Yes, it helped a bunch of people. At the end of the day, I built this masjid, for example. This is just an example. I built this masjid. I did it, for example, for the wrong reasons, let's say. Well, at the end of the day, people still go and pray there. People still go and they worship there. People still come, they learn there. Why is it all of a sudden this deed of mine has no value at all? The reason why this deed has no value at all is because you're misunderstanding the whole point of that good deed. If God wanted to do that good deed on his own, if he wanted to create just a masjid, he could have done it on his own. He asked you to do it so that you can spiritually grow in the process. But you did it for the wrong reasons. Therefore, you're not growing in the process. Therefore, this act of worship has no value in his eyes. You say, well, people are praying there. If he wanted to make a place where people could pray, he could have done it himself. If he wanted to feed the poor, he could have done it himself. He's waiting to see if you're going to do it and you're going to do it for the right reasons or not. We imagine God is in need of our help. So, well, we helped you. He says, listen, I didn't need your help. I wanted you to do it with a particular intention because I wanted you to grow in the process. You didn't do it with that intention. Yes, there's a masjid there, but if I wanted to create the masjid on my own, I would have done it by myself. No, I asked you to do it with the right intention. This is why even if I do a good deed, but there is no proper intention in it, this act of worship doesn't carry any weight or any value. You show up on that day, maybe it doesn't even show up for you. And this is a bit scary because we do a bunch of things, yes? I attend majlis, I speak, you listen. These are all acts of worship within the Shia school of thought. These are all acts of worship. So then I ask myself, well, if it's this scary, I do things and then it might even show up on that day. How can I know if I'm doing things with the right intention then? I probably can't count how many times I've gotten this question. It's a very valid question. Sheikh, I'm a bit worried. I don't know. Am I doing things for the right intention, with the right reasons? It's a valid question. Especially as you get older in age, especially you get further steps in life, this question becomes even more and more important for you. I've wondered about this myself. What if I show up on that day and they say, yeah, you spoke for Muharram, but you did for the wrong reasons. That's painful. How can I know if I did things for the right reasons? Imam Khomeini has a very beautiful point in his book, 40 Hadith. He's discussing the topic of tribalism and racism, and he's explaining how the human being has to start working on himself, and the human being has to, try to fix these characteristics within himself. And, forgive me, this is on the chapter of Riya. He's talking about Riya over there. And then he makes this beautiful point. He says, make sure you do things for the right reason, and here's how you can know if you're doing them for the right reason. Oh, this is very valuable, very valuable. So how can I know if I'm doing things for the right reason? He says, when you do this act of worship, charitable donation, I don't know, you volunteer your time, you set up the tent, whatever, you speak, whatever. So there's one question you have to ask yourself. If someone else were to do this act of worship, and he ended up getting the praise for it, how would you react? If someone else was doing this and he got the praise for it instead of you, would you be happy that at the end of the day, the job got done? Or would you sit there and say, no, I had to do it? Isn't that a beautiful question? And then he says, the moment you think this and the moment you ask yourself this question, your ego and your nafs will come back to you with a rebuttal. What is the rebuttal? Your nafs will tell you, no, I am not happy because I wanted to be the one who has the tawfiq and the opportunity to do this good deed. That's why I'm upset. And he says, I'll give you a rebuttal to his rebuttal. If he says that, you tell him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have rewarded you whether you got the chance to act upon that intention or not. So why are you so upset? See how beautifully he plays this game with the nafs and the ego? Only a scholar can do this, by the way. When I say scholar, I mean someone like him. He said, when your nafs come back to you and says, no, I wish I had the opportunity to do this. He says, okay, tell him. You got the reward for it anyways. As we're discussing, you made the intention, God is going to reward you anyways. So now what are you so upset about? And he says, if you're still upset, then that's not a good sign. I can ask myself, yes, when it comes to the wajib, when it comes to the haram, it's a little bit easier. When it comes to those extra acts of worship that I do, that's where things become difficult. You have to ask yourself this question constantly. Why am I doing this? If someone else was doing this, they got the praise for it, how would I feel about all of this? And this brings us to the final question that we will answer tonight. And that final question is the following. Someone says, you know what, Shaykh? The only thing that matters in Islam is your intentions. Hadith of the Prophet says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The only thing that matters is your intentions. That's not the correct translation of the hadith. I'm just putting that out there so we can propose the way this person thinks. He says, listen, Shaykh, this whole idea of practice the details of the religion, your dress code has to be like this. If you're a brother, you have to lower your gaze. I don't know. You have to be careful what you look at. Eat halal. Make sure you don't eat haram. Pray 5 times a day. Fast this many times a day. Stuff doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is your intentions. Are you a good person at your heart? If you're a good person at your heart, no problem. The rest of the stuff doesn't matter. Here. The Prophet said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. This is one of the most common misunderstandings I found within our communities. Because the hadith says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The hadith says, when you do something, when you stay away from that haram, or when you act upon the wajib, then whether it is accepted or not, and to the extent that is accepted, depends on your intention. But you have to do the deed first. It doesn't say skip all the deeds. The only thing that matters is your intention. When did the hadith say that? The hadith didn't say the only thing that matters in Islam is your intentions. Which translation are we getting this from? The hadith said when you do something, what does that mean? You stay away from the haram. When you do the salat, when you do the fasting, when you observe the proper dress code, when you give your financial duties, when you do all of this, to what extent is it accepted or not accepted? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Depends on your intention. This is the correct understanding of things. Otherwise, we think it's simple, and we will discuss this more, inshallah, the final night. Tomorrow's the final night. Tomorrow night, we'll discuss more about this, about how complex Islam is and how sometimes we try to simplify it, and this is an injustice to Islam. We'll discuss this more tomorrow. Many of us want to just get rid of all of the details within Islam. It doesn't matter. Just your heart, good person, khalas, that's the only thing that matters. Where did Islam ever say this? No, our religion is a complex religion. The details matter. If the detail is a haram or a wajib, that means it's important enough for God to make it haram or wajib. You have to act upon it. I have to act upon it. It's okay. We might have shortcomings. That's fine. You say, you know what? I'm not strong enough to act upon all of this. But don't dismiss it. Don't sit there and say, yeah, the only thing that matters is your intention. No, we have to be very careful about that. Hadith says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. You do the deeds, and then to what extent? Yes, depends on your intention. This is why Hadith says, when a servant of God, when he stands there to pray, he gives adhan and iqamah. There are hadith about the reward of adhan and iqamah. One hadith says if he gives adhan and iqamah and he stands to pray, there's one line of angels that join him. The other hadith says if he gives adhan and iqamah, there are, for example, 10 lines that join him. Different numbers mentioned in hadith. Another hadith says thousands of angels join him. So which one is it? Which one is the reward? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Depends how pure his intention is. Depends on his faith. If he has that strong faith, yes, all of a sudden he prays one prayer, thousands of angels are behind him. If his faith is a little bit weaker, what happens? Maybe a couple lines are behind him. Maybe 10 angels join. All depends on what? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Depends on his intention. Yes? Hadith says, or verses of the Quran actually say this. They say you do one good deed, we'll multiply it by 10. Then other verses of the Quran say, no, you give charity, we'll multiply it by 700. Excuse me, there's a huge difference between 10 and 700. It's a huge jump. So what is the reward at the end of the day? Is it 10 or is it 700? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Depends on how pure your intention is. For some people, their intention is so pure, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies by what? 700. For some people, no. Not that pure, only by 10. And this is why you find beautifully when it came to Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi alayhi. When it came to Ali ibn Abi Talib, he had the purest of intentions. That when Amr ibn Abduwad was on the ground, Ali ibn Abi Talib was getting rid of him for the final moments, the battle of Khandaq, and he spit on the face of the Imam. Everyone was expecting for the Imam to finish him off. This guy was one of the most famous warriors of Arab. And the Imam got up and he started walking around and walking around and walking around. And people were saying, finish him off. He's on the ground. And finally, Ali ibn Abi Talib took care of him. And they asked him, Ya Ali, why did it take you so long? He said, when he spit on my face, I got angry. I didn't want to kill him out of anger. I wanted to get rid of him because he's attacking Islam. I wanted to do it for the right reasons. He's attacking Medina. He's jumping over this Khandaq. He's threatening Islam at its core. I wanted to make sure I do it for the right reasons. And this is why our Prophet is narrated to have said, ضَرْبَةُ عَلِيٍّ يَوْمَ الْخَنْدَقِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ الثَّقَلَيْنِ. That the striking of the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib on the day of the battle of Khandaq is worth the worship of the jinn and the ins put together. How? It's just one sword and one striking. How long did this battle take? Not too long. How is it? He struck his sword once, but it counts this much. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. When you have intentions like him, then even the smallest of deeds that you do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies it. Therefore, this hadith is not a way for us to dismiss all the details that we have in Islam. It is a way for us to do everything that Islam tells us to do, but also with the right intentions. With that, inshallah, we'll bring tonight's talk to an end. Please recite 3 loud salawats. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Just a quick announcement. Inshallah, we will be hosting the Q&A session right after the Mahdi.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا مظلوم، صلى الله عليك يا أيها الشهيد في كربلاء. Brothers and sisters, before we take our hearts to Karbala, let us go to Kufa, to the deathbed of Ali. He calls upon Al-Abbas, my son, come here, my daughter Zainab, come here. He puts the right hand of Zainab in the hand of Abbas. He looked at him and said, my son Abbas, this is my wadi'ah. Zainab is my entrustment to you. Oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, if only you saw how he upheld your will. To see what Al-Abbas did for Zainab. The family of the Prophet stands without a helper, as they have lost their companions and many of their family members. Abbas could no longer handle it. He asks Hussain to seek revenge from them. Imam Hussain replied saying, Ya akhi, anta hamilun liwa'i. My brother, you are my flag bearer. How can Imam Hussain let his backbone go into the battlefield? How can Zainab see Abbas go to the battlefield? The Imam allowed Abbas to go and get water for the children. And so Abbas went toward the enemy and said, يا عمر بن سعد هذا الحسين بن بنت رسول الله. This is Hussein, son of the daughter of the Prophet. You have killed his companions and family. His family and children are thirsty. So give them some water to quench their burning hearts. Narration state that the words of Abbas affected the hearts of the enemy. Some of them began to cry, but Shimr called out, Yabna Abi Turab, if the face of the earth was all water and under our control, we would not give you a single drop. Abbas then embarked on his horse and took the water skin. Men could not stand in his way as he reached the Euphrates River. With the scent of death on my hands, I reached the river in sorrow. I raised water to take a sip and watch it between fingers flow. The sweetness of the water near, I watch it both glisten and glow. I recall Hussein and those girls. From my hands the water I throw. In thirst they sink, I will not drink the water. Tearless they blink, they speak and think the water. He dropped the water and filled the canteen. He put it on his shoulder and left the river. Umar ibn Saad shouted, cut the path before him, shoot the canteen by God. If the water reaches the camp, he will end you all. They surrounded him from all sides as he shouted, I do not fear death. But soon after, he was ambushed by Zayd ibn Warqa from behind a palm tree and held by Hakim bin Tufail. Ibn Tufail struck him upon his right. Abu al-Fadl took the canteen with his left. He was ambushed again. He said to himself, from cruelty they have cut off my left hand. My Lord, let them suffer a great torment. He held the canteen with his teeth. He held the canteen with his teeth and continued to the camp. Another arrow came piercing the canteen. Another arrow was shot and hit him in the chest. Another arrow was shot and hit Abu al-Fadl in the eye. He paused. No eye to see, no arms to fight, no water to take to the tent. At this moment, brothers and sisters, another soldier struck him with a spear upon the head. When a warrior is struck, brothers and sisters, how does he break the fall? With his hand. May I be ransom for you, Abu al-Fadl. He fell to the ground upon his face, shouting, my brother Abu Abdullah, adrikni. Abu Abdullah, adrikni. Seeing Abbas like this, Imam Hussain said, Al-an ankasara dhahri. Now my back has broken. Al-Hussein took Abbas's head and placed it on his lap. He began to wipe the blood off his eyes and saw that he was crying. Hussein asked, what has made you cry, Abu al-Fadl? He replied, O light of my eyes, how can I not cry when you have come to me and taken my head in your lap? But in an hour, who will lift your head from the ground and wipe the sand off your face? Don't take me back to the tents, for I cannot face Sakina empty-handed. The Imam returned to the camp without Abbas and informed the women of the tragedy. They began to weep. It's as if Zainab is telling Abbas, from your horse descend, my brother. From your horse descend, my brother. This is the trust from my mother. Your chest the horses will smother. Between us, this is the farewell. From your horse descend, my brother. This is the trust from my mother. Your chest the horses will smother. Between us, this is the farewell. Your neck and chest to me reveal. Let me embrace, and your heart I feel. Before they bring their rods of steel, and we lose your love tonight. I see the children in their fright. Where is the moon on this night? Even the stars I do not sight. Dark is the road ahead, my dear. Not just the tents, but even my veil. They will attack when they prevail. I call you, where are you, my avail? Near the Furat, won't you rise? My eyes, they see you on the ground. Why don't I hear from you a sound? Abbas, please rise and turn around. It is Zainab calling for you. And Abbas replies, my heart, O Zainab, you broke. When all alone and hurt you spoke. And on your words I now choke. Towards the river, don't you gaze? This is a trial from God to try. If you see my arms, don't you cry. Stand from afar and say your goodbye. Near the river, don't you arrive. Assalamu alayka ya Abal Faz. Assalamu alayka ya Abal Faz. Assalamu alayka ya Abal Faz. Upon you be peace, O son of Ali. You bring peace to the camp of purity. How your steps bring comfort to the children. How with you Zainab can sleep peacefully. O flag bearer of Hussain, with you how can there be pain? With you look how peaceful the camp is. No threat of the ropes or chains until dear Abbas remains. How the enemies were afraid of just his name. Abbas, Abbas, the flag bearer of Hussain, son of Ali. Upon your lips was his name, son of Ali. Upon your lips was his name. Assalamu alayka ya Abal Fad. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل. On one side the sound of flowing water, on the other side cries Hussein's daughter. On one side the children and all their cries, on the other side the evil laughter. How could he just watch and hear? How could the evil not care? How could anyone treat the children like this? Let me get water, Maula. Let me comfort Ruqayya. After Abbas, no longer water will she miss. Abbas, Abbas, the flag bearer of Hussain, son of Ali. Upon your lips was his name, son of Ali. Upon your lips was his name. Assalamu alayka ya Abal Fadl. Assalamu عليك يا أبا الفضل السلام 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 عليك يا أبا الفضل صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. يا أبا الفضل أبا الفضل يا عباس 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 يا أبا الفضل يا أبا الفضل أبا. You are the son of our master Ali. You are the moon to bring Zahra glory. You are the light of Ahl al-Bayt story. Your eyes blessed, sacrifice so holy. Ya Aba al-Fadl, Aba al-Fadl, Ya Abbas. Ya Aba al-Fadl, Aba al-Fadl, Ya Abbas. Ya Aba al-Fadl, Aba al-Fadl, Ya Abbas. Ya Aba al-Fadl, Aba. Don't tell me that he died lonely and thirsty. Don't tell me that Zainab saw him bloody. Just tell me that our mother saw me dying. For as long as I lived, so did my brother Hussein. Don't tell me that parched you kept on waiting. Don't tell me that the tents never stopped their burning. I know that you were not fearing anything. But all I heard was my name. You were screaming, Ya Abal Fad, Abal. Ya Abal Fad, Abal Fad, Ya Abbas. Ya Abal Fad, Abal Fad, Ya Abbas. Ya Abal Fad, Abal Fad, Ya Abbas. Don't tell me that the moon stopped illuminating. Don't tell me that the moon stopped illuminating. Don't tell me that the people of Sham were cheering. Don't tell me that they snatched off your covering. Don't tell me that they ripped off your earrings. Don't tell me that your eyes never stopped tearing. Oh dear God, just tell me I am dreaming. I know that you were not fearing anything. But all I heard was my name. You were screaming, Ya Abal Fad. Ya Abal Fad, Abal Fad, Ya Abbas. Ya Abal Fad, Abal Fad, Ya Abbas. Ya Abal Fad, As my head saw from above an arrow, as my head saw from above an arrow, I could not help but in shame just follow. Oh, my brother, if my arms were with me, but they left them broken and ripped my body. Cut my body in 1,000 pieces. Cut my body in 1,000 pieces. For Hussein, I have 1,000 reasons to come back and die again, my beloved. Please tell your son to return, my beloved. Ya Mahdi adrikni ya Mawlai. Ya Mahdi adrikni ya Mawlai. Ya Mahdi adrikni ya Mawlai. يا مهدي أدركني يا مولاي يا أبا الفضل أبا الفضل يا عباس 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 صلوات الله محمد وآل محمد. يا حسين 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 يا مولا يا مولا يا مولا 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 حسين يا مولا يا مولا يا مولا. Thirsty Ruqayya, thirsty Abdullah, we just need water. Father, some water. Where's your flag bearer? Where's your flag bearer? Son of Fatima, son of Fatima. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussein's all alone. Shah Qasim has gone. Ali Akbar's gone. Abu Fadil's gone. Even Abdullah. Hussein wa wayla. Even Abdullah. Hussein wa wayla. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Zainab cries Allah, where's Abdullah? Where's Ali Akbar? Where is Abdullah? Where is my Alamdar? Where's my flag bearer? Where's my protector? Where's my Abbas? Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Zahra cries Hussein, Zainab cries Hussein. My tears cry Hussein, my tears cry Hussein. My heart cries Hussein, Hussein cries out last. Hussein cries out last. Where is my Abbas? Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya. Children cry in thirst. Where is my Abbas? Abbas cries in pain. Children, I've been slain. I can't bring water for you, Ruqayya. I can't bring water for you, Ruqayya. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearers. Cries of Al-Attash, but I am Abbas. I will bring water for Hussein's daughter, but they've ambushed me, but they've ambushed me. Master, forgive me. Master, forgive me. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. 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 He won't quench his thirst, for Hussein comes first. With his arms cut off, still won't taste a drop. Blinded by arrow, blinded by arrow. I cry in sorrow, I cry in sorrow. Abbas flag bearer, flag bearer, flag bearer. 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 Saviors of Islam, I send my salam upon you, master. When I drink water, all my love for you, all my life for you. I will beat my chest, I will never rest. I will give my life, I will sacrifice. In my life always, your flag is raised high. In my life always, your flag is raised high. Hussein ya Mawla, ya Mawla, ya Mawla. 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 Salawatu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Everyone, do me a favor, you can all have a seat. Inshallah, we'll be starting the Q&A session in just a few minutes.
You have the other mic for questions? Okay. So do you want to pass this around? Oh, okay, inshallah. So we're gonna have the Q&A. The brothers had mentioned that some had asked for the Q&A. So the only point I want to mention is that the Q&A is open to any question. It doesn't have to be on the topics we discussed, or it can be on anything and everything. Some questions, inshallah, we'll spend more time on. Some questions we might spend a little less time on, depending on how beneficial I think it might be for the majority of our crowd. But please don't be shy, or that kind of stuff. Just ask your question. It's completely fine. Yeah, don't hold back. So feel free to ask whatever you like to ask. We have sessions in Dallas. The guys ask anything and everything. So feel comfortable in that sense of the word.
We'll start with that. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand. We'll pass it around to you. People request for this, so start off. Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I kind of had a question, generally speaking. I feel like a lot of the youth kind of grew up being told that, we have to follow certain things without really having an explanation as to why we believe the way we do. And now that I guess some of us are getting older in college or beyond, we're starting to question more things, or becoming more interested as to why we were told to just follow certain practices or blindly. So I guess the kind of question I'm asking is, like, for someone who's starting to become curious as to, like, or just wants to go back to the basics of religion and make sure they have an understanding of what Islam truly is, or why we believe certain things, how would you go back to just like creating a baseline, or just going back to the basics? So when we practice our faith, we know why we're practicing it, as opposed to being told to practice it from when we were younger.
Does that work? Oh, great. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a general way to do that. There is a specific way to do that, right? The general way is that you have to start building these building blocks, which means you essentially have to gain knowledge about your religion. That's really what you have to do. And that's why, during Muharram and stuff like that, that's really the aim of these lectures anyways. That's always I keep in mind, right? Like, we're not here to just say Imam Hussain was wonderful. We already know that. We're here to learn deeper about the religion, So amongst those building blocks, of course, is Quran, and just learning more about it and hearing more about it. So one thing I can suggest is nowadays we have recordings of lectures, and then we also have podcasts. I would highly suggest podcasts, because it's the most passive way of learning. I don't know if you do audiobooks or whatever the case might be. I do a lot of audiobooks because I just don't get the time to sit down and read as often as I used to. So that's one way. If you just go online, I think lectures are online. Of course, you can search whichever speaker comes to your mind. And then one institute that I'm involved with, Mizan Institute, they have a number of different podcasts. So those podcasts will go through Quran, they will go through Hadith. These are the building blocks that you have, right? So it's not something that you'll see an effect from immediately, like I'll answer this question or that question immediately. But overall, over time, that's what's really going to help you out. So that's number one. If it's a specific thing, then you'll have to reach out. Like if it's a specific practice, then you just have to reach out to someone and, say, okay, what is the reason behind this, and why do we do it exactly, and stuff like that. We discussed, I don't know if you had the chance to listen the nights we were discussing the asking why in Islam, right?
Kind of based off of like that.
Yeah. So is it more of the I feel like it's more of the number one type of why. Like, if we do this practice on Ashura, what is the backing for it, for example? Or if we do, If we do this certain custom, for example, what is the backing for it, right? So that there's a general way of doing it. If you want to be more specific, then you just have to reach out to an alim and be like, hey, like, do we have any backing for this? You know, when we were doing matam, someone messaged me actually from our own community. They're like, they sent me like a tweet or something, and they were like, is this true or is this not true? You know, so that would be a more specific way of doing it if it's like something specific and you need the answer, you know. But the other way is like the long-term strategic plan is to continue learning about the religion. Yeah. Yes, the mic.
No, we just gotta be using
Oh, you use this? Okay. Well, then give me the other one. Oh, it's not working. Okay, no problem, no problem. You're good.
Something I've been thinking about in the future when we all have kids and stuff, what is the way to instill the habits of praying and reading Quran, in a way that they'll receive it better instead of, I don't know, if it's more so they're not going to watch it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what do you,
So, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? That's a $1 million question, right? It's essentially saying, how can I do something that someone grows up as a practicing Muslim? So there's no easy question for it, no easy answer to it. But amongst the most important things that I will tell you is environment and atmosphere. And I always tell the guys back in Dallas, I'm like, if you having this child breathe in an Islamic environment is extremely important. I mean, I can't emphasize how important it is. Parents sometimes don't do a good job with that. So they just leave this child, and yes, they'll tell them to do stuff. But when you're younger, it's not about what you're told to do. It's about what you're seeing and the atmosphere you're breathing in. That's how you absorb stuff when you're younger, right? So they leave this child, and then when he's 16, then they'll be like, oh, Malana, come and tell him to pray. Malana, come and tell him to fast. But this kid doesn't have any foundation. By 16, he's lost interest in any religious discussions, you know, because that wasn't the environment he was breathing in growing up. He was growing up with a bunch of other stuff, you know. So that's the biggest thing, I think. Now, you may not have the opportunity to have a situation where you can have your child breathe in an Islamic environment 24/7. That may not be an option for you. Then you just have to try to get as close as you possibly can, you know, whatever it is. You know, sometimes you have youth groups, for example, they might get together, they might do a couple things, a couple hours a week, for example. A lot of times parents don't even care. If there's majlis, they'll go to majlis. But if their child has to attend a program where they can spend time with other kids in the same value system, they won't care. Or they won't support it, for example, or they won't volunteer for it, for example. This is the stuff that matters 10 times more than telling our child, pray, fast, all that kind of stuff, you know? That's one thing. Second thing is, somehow, some way, you have to give a deep understanding of the religion to this child. Now, at a younger age, you know, they're younger, but when they hit their teenage years and they ask questions and all that stuff, you have to have some sort of avenue to answer those questions, because without those questions answered, religion is going to be very confusing to them. So that might be through, I don't know, like in your guys' case, you know, with your alim or any alims that are visiting or whatever the case might be. Those two, atmosphere and knowledge, that's what's going to get the child there. Sisters have questions? Sisters usually have a lot of questions. Yeah, you see? Wa alaikum assalam. Mm-hmm.
That you are not able to.
Mm-hmm.
Is it better that you don't have children?
First of all, I think it's a good concern to have. Unfortunately, in our cultures, the idea is, forgive me, but the idea is just like, you get married, you just have children. Islam never said that. Like, you're supposed to, you know, think things out and figure things out. A little bit financially, though the financial side, for most of us living this part of the world, that's less of a concern, alhamdulillah. But no, you like the idea of just getting married, have kids, that's not how it's supposed to work. But I would say this is a good concern. It's not a concern that should stop someone from having kids, though. Because at the end of the day, there are things that you can do to, make sure that this child is raised the right way. So, and there's a lot of emphasis in Islam to have children. Doesn't mean if someone doesn't have children, all of a sudden they have no value in Islam. No, that's another extreme we have in our communities, Some of the greatest women to have ever lived did not have children. Yes, the sister of the 8th Imam, Lady Fatima Ma'asuma, she didn't have children. She didn't even get married. For whatever her reason was and whatever her specific situation was, there's no trace of any husband or any child in her life. And we say she's one of the best women, yes? So I don't want to go to that extreme, but generally, there is emphasis in Islam on having children, right? So it's a wonderful thing. If someone has the opportunity, they should do it. And if they have these concerns, they have to plan for these concerns instead of saying, well, I have this concern, so I'm not going to go even touch this idea. That would be Islam's general approach in that regard. Another one of the sisters had a question back there. Oh, yes, Bismillah. Who to follow? Oh, which ruling? You got to choose a marja. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. If to speak. You just have to choose one of them at the end of the day, right? So, because the reason why you have to choose one is exactly what you're saying. Sometimes the details, they have differences, right? Like Ayatollah Sistani has some differences with Ayatollah Khamenei on a lot of different issues. So between Ayatollah Khamenei, Ayatollah Sistani, these individuals, you can choose one and then you just stick to that person. Now in Islam, I will say this, in the Shia school of thought, there are times where you can follow a certain marja on certain rulings and follow another marja on other rulings. If you see them at the same level of knowledge, basically. What I'll say it this way, once you follow a marja on a specific area, you can't switch afterwards. Does that make sense? So, and don't do this because it's going to get really, really messy. So my suggestion, just follow one marja on all of the issues. And that way, this is exactly why we choose a marja, because they have differences of opinion. Yeah. Yes. Oh, they're going to give you the mic, inshallah.
Question I have is, have kids and know that Islam is the best religion and that they have to teach them and they teach them back. And at the same time, the kids themselves are seeing that Islam is Islam war and all that stuff is not the best state of affairs. How do you reconcile and make them understand, hey, this is the thing, this is the truth, and at the same time, so this is kind of contradicting when we're going, when we're going up. It's a question about how do you reconcile and help kids understand that?
That's a wonderful question. So the question is, you have kids, younger generation, and they look at the Muslim world today and they see the type of situation that it's in. And they say, well, how is this possible if our religion is like the best and, the golden religion out there and all that kind of stuff? And why is our state of affairs like this? There's two ways you explain that. First of all, you have to explain to kids what Islam is so that they understand that what happens a lot of times in these Muslim countries is not Islam. That's one step of the process. Second part of the process is creating that golden environment in your own household. You can create that golden environment in your own household by actually acting upon the things Islam asks us to act upon. Then the child is a lot more easily convinced about this. But if the father, mother, whatever the case might be, right? He's got bad akhlaq. That's not going to work. I jokingly tell people, I'm like, if you have bad akhlaq, just don't talk to your children about religion because it's going to work the opposite, right? It's going to do the opposite thing. If there's constantly fighting in the house, if there's no manners that the father has or the mother has, for example, whichever the case might be. If there's constantly issues with the relatives and that, if you create a good environment within the household, you can say, look at our family, this is how it is, right? And then you can tell them, yeah, other families don't do this, so they have a lot of issues. But if they don't see it in their own house, then yeah, it's very difficult to convince them. That's a question. Wa alaikum assalam. Yeah. So the question is, how do you engage in terms of civic engagement, I would say, in terms of living in this part of the world, or even in the political sphere, supporting a group or, that kind of stuff? Because at the end of the day, there's no one who's going to agree with you 100% in terms of what you believe in. So it's a very good point. I think one point that most people forget is that even during the times of the Imams, it was never a type of situation where they could support someone who was in power, who was 100% correct about everything that he did. It was never like that. They lived during the time of the Khulafa. The Khulafa had millions of issues, right? So at the end of the day, all it comes down to is you look at the situation. If you feel like this person being in office is really going to help people, it's going to, whatever they believe in is close at least to what you believe in, voting is not haram, right? If you feel like you can make a difference through it, there's no problem in doing it. If you feel like you can make things better, yes? Sometimes you might come to the conclusion, you might look at the two people, right? And when I say this, by the way, I'm talking about the national level. The local level is a separate discussion. I'll get to that, shortly. But on the national level, you might look at two people and say, I don't know. That's also an option. And maybe you don't vote because at the end of the day, you're not able to point to whichever one and say, oh, this one's better, this one is worse, right? So that's how that works. But if you really feel like you can have a person who's going to create less problems, you can vote for that person. That's not a problem. This is the ruling of our Maraja I'm quoting. It's not like just an opinion I'm giving, right? Having said that, a lot of times our local elections are extremely important and we don't even pay attention to them. Because your local elections are actually where a lot of the laws that you deal with on a daily basis actually come from, Yes, foreign policy, of course, a lot of it is dealt with at the federal level, right? But a lot of local elections are important. If you feel like you can put someone in office who, for example, has policies that are more in line with what you believe in, absolutely, you push for that. So that's just the way to go about it. You're never going to find a 100% match, and Islam doesn't expect you to find a 100% match either. Islam is expecting you to find, the lesser of two evils. I know that's a cliche. I know people use that very often. That's the reality of it. I think sometimes people don't realize what the lesser of two evils means. Say, this is the lesser of two evil. When he does evil, they say, look, he did evil. Say, Habibi, this was the lesser of two evils. I didn't say he doesn't do evil. He does a lot of evil. The other one does more, right? I've seen this, people conflating this with one another a lot, right? Especially with, just be very honest, right? This administration, previous administration, and stuff like that. So, well, here, he did this. Yes, of course he did this. What did you expect him to be like on your side? Let me tell you something. None of these politicians are on your side. None of them. And if someone thinks that, they don't know politics. That's the whole point of politics, right? Politicians don't it's not like that. I'm sorry to break it to you. It's not like no one's on your side for the sake of being on your side. No, they have their policies. You have to see if this person is in office, what he ends up doing. Is it overall in the best interest of our country and the Muslims and so on and so forth? Then you go with it, right? And if it's not, then you go against it. And if you, at the end of the day, you really don't know, then you don't have any step to take, right? Because voting is not, you don't just vote just to vote. You vote because you're trying to make a difference. If you feel like both sides are the same, then maybe you don't vote at all. Local elections are important, though. I said that before, I'll say it again. They're important and they can play a big role. You have someone in there who's more sympathetic towards the Muslim cause, they can make lives a lot easier. So that's something we need to pay more attention to, actually. Yes.
Kind of piggyback on political activism. I just like, sometimes I feel like, especially from going from the Trump administration to the Biden administration, a lot of us thought voting for Biden might have been better because, Trump with his Muslim ban, yada, yada, yada. But now, me and like some of my friends are kind of sitting back and looking at how Biden supported how the Palestine-Israel conflict went down on his quotes, and now his handling of, withdrawing the troops in Afghanistan. If anything, we're kind of sitting back and looking like, do we just vote for someone that is causing more harm and pain to Muslims across the country? And you're kind of having this like feeling of, I guess, guilt because you voted for this man. So how do you come to grips with that? Because if you look back in history, I think since Clinton, every single administration has done something that has probably caused more pain and torture in the Arab climate of the Muslim world. So it's just tough to kind of figure out, like, whoever we vote for, it looks like we're causing some sort of pain and torture to Muslim brothers overseas. And should we feel guilty about making these decisions when we're voting?
No, listen, that's why I said it's not an easy thing to figure out. Politics is not easy to figure out. Figuring out what this person is going to do when he's in power is not an easy thing. You don't even know what you're going to do and what I'm going to do if we had power. Like, we don't. We think we'll do this or that. They give us a little bit of power, we do something else, right? So if that's us, we can't even figure it out for ourselves. It's not an easy thing. No, you don't have to feel guilty. What you do have to do, what we all have to do, is not be naive. I see naive people a lot. Oh yeah, this politician, he's on our side, and that politician is on our side. And no, none of these guys are on your side. That's very naive and simplistic. No, you try your best. You look at the situation, right? And if you really feel like, hey, this guy is closer to what we believe in, okay, you go for it. At the end of the day, you do what you have to do. The results are in the hands of God. You might feel a little guilty later on, whatever he does, but you were just acting based off your intention. It does help you, though, be sympathetic towards another person who might look at the same situation and be like, I don't know. Because a lot of times in our communities, it'll be like this huge thing, right? Like, this person, of course, this guy's much better. How dare you say no? Like, why wouldn't you do this? When you realize you made a mistake a couple of times, then you're like, okay, let me settle down a little bit. This is my understanding. You can speak to other people to even try to convince them, even there's no problem in any of that, right? But you're not going to be the type of person that says, oh, you didn't do this, so like you're a problem. Or you voted for this person, you're like this. It's not like that. So everyone has their own understanding. Having a political understanding of these matters is important. Don't be the type of person who lives in America and has no idea what's happening in the world and has no idea what America's role is in everything that's happening in the world. That's another problem we have in our youth. They're more involved with TikTok than they are with what's happening in the world. So I don't want you to, we shouldn't be like that. But no, you look at the situation with the best of your understanding. And like I said, sometimes you might look at it and at the end of the day say, you know what? I really can't tell. I don't know which one is best or which one is going to cause less harm. Yeah. So not to feel guilty about it, you try and you see what happens. You want to go for a question? Go for a question. Why do Molanas have to wear this? Because if I didn't, no one would know I'm Molana. Because I don't have the knowledge, so I gotta wear this. At least people find out this way. Make sense? It's like a sign. Any questions, sister side, brother side?
So just one thing, with
Yeah.
knowing that the past of certain people who will be in a position of
Mhm.
fighting one thing before, is it just better to be like avoiding the whole sense? Because let's be honest, like, at the end of the day, we know no side will be Muslims. As you mentioned, we know that the goal is the government are completely different from the goals that as a Shia, the university. Now, seeing that putting into power, knowing that, like as an example, let's just say last year we had this issue with Trump. We knew both of their stance on Palestine versus Israel. We knew the stance of the people.
Yeah.
Now, choosing one of them and then continuing to be neutral. I mean, how can we go with that? Like, do we just see that who is a little bit better?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. They're just a little bit better. And if, again, you're reiterating what I'm saying, right? You might say, well, they're all the same. Okay, if they're all the same, then yeah, then voting doesn't really make sense. Yeah.
So it comes at the end of the day.
It comes down to your understanding. Yeah. And the thing is, we can't be judgmental about this stuff. Someone might have this understanding, another person might have that understanding. One person might be wrong. They might think this person is the right option. Then later on, it turns out they were the wrong option. Don't keep sending them, I don't know, messages and tweets and, oh, look what he did, look what he did, look what he did. Okay, he's wrong. Like maybe you have a discussion with him later, but you can't like, oh, you see, I told you it's gonna, I told you. You know how many of these messages I see all the time? What's the problem? Is that person is now he's gonna feel like humiliated now, right? Everyone has to try on their best understanding. It's completely fine to have discussions, you sit with your friends, you think about this stuff. That's good. You should be doing that, right? But at the end of the day, different people are going to have different understandings about the situation. Maybe you go to an alim to ask for their general guidance if they have any guidance on this issue, if you're stuck and you're confused, or other people who have insight into these matters, and you make your decision at the end of the day. And like you're saying, if you feel like, no, it doesn't really make a difference, okay, and that's your understanding, and you want to vote. No question? Wonderful question. Why is the men's clothing aspect, like the duty that men have when it comes to their clothing, not emphasized as much? Well, there's two reasons. First of all, our culture and religion usually are mixed with one another. So because of that, whenever we talk about modesty, the mind goes towards the female side. That's part of our cultural background that we have. It's like that in a lot of different cultures. Otherwise, modesty is mentioned in the Quran for the male and the female. That's one main reason. So yeah, does a male have responsibilities in this regard? Absolutely. I will say this though, if you're just looking at the rulings, the duties that the man has, particularly when it comes to clothing, not when it comes to hijab as a whole, particularly when it comes to clothing, is naturally a little bit more relaxed than it is for our sisters. That's the reality of the matter. I'm saying this, I'm on the sister side. So you're gonna realize why I'm on your side. Sometimes people say, oh, well, if this sister has to wear hijab like this, well, brothers have to wear clothing too. Habibi, the rulings for the men is easier. It's a lot more relaxed than the rulings for who? For the sisters. People I've seen, they equate these two to one another. They say, well, I have to wear this. I've even heard people, they say, well, if the sisters have to wear hijab, well, I have to have a beard. So, okay, a beard. How does that like make life difficult for you? You're trying to say it's equal now? It's not the same, right? So what I will say is this. There is a duty with regards to clothing when it comes to men, 100%. Is that disregarded in our communities at times? 100%. There's no doubt about it, yes? But there is a little bit of, the rulings are a little bit more relaxed. There is another bigger test that men have that kind of makes up for that relaxed ruling on that side. And that is lowering the gaze. And I will be honest, if you're a female, you don't understand this test that men are going through. And if you're a man, you don't understand the test that women go through just by covering. No gender can sit there and say your test is easy because you're not that gender. You don't know. You haven't experienced it. There's biological differences between men and women. Certain things are very difficult for men. Certain things are very difficult for women. Generally speaking, there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, it is very difficult for the male to not pay attention to something. Generally speaking, the test of the woman is to not draw attention to herself. They both have their own tests. So yes, there is definitely the rulings of hijab on the male side. It is definitely disregarded in our communities. If you find it's a little bit more relaxed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's because they have this extra layer of test on the other side. You might say, well, that's easy. You just put your head down. It's not that easy. Okay, trust me, it's not that easy. The same way a male might look at a sister and say, well, you just cover up. It's not that easy. You haven't experienced it. You don't know. So neither of us can look at the other gender and say, well, their job is easier. It's not easy. But yeah, it's definitely, the male hijab is definitely disregarded in our communities. Lowering the gaze is a huge problem in our communities. Any last questions, inshallah? Why did only men go to the battlefield? Because the women are much more special. So God says, you know what? If I want to get rid of some of them, let the men go. Let them go. Okay? The women are special. The men, they're disposable. Send them. If they go, they don't come back, it's not a problem. That's the reason. Yes. Any more questions? I think he has one.
What is your opinion on Shia-Sunni marriage?
Great question. Loaded question, but great question. Listen, Shia Sunni marriage, nobody can say this marriage is not valid. If anyone says this marriage is not valid, they have to answer because that's not the ruling of Allah. So it's a valid marriage. Would I recommend it, encourage it, push for it? No. Why? Because marriage is a difficult process when people come from different backgrounds. It's not just Shia Sunni. If you're marrying outside of your culture, this also can potentially make things a little difficult because you guys have different backgrounds. The families have different customs, they have different practices, they have different cultures, so on and so forth. When it comes to different ethnicities, still, it's not that difficult at times, though even that can create difficulties at times. But Shia and Sunni will definitely create hurdles in this marriage. So why is it that when I am going into this marriage, why should I add extra hurdles and extra obstacles for myself when the process is already difficult? The process already takes so much patience and compromise. And why should I add an extra layer of difficulty? Why should I place my children in a situation where they don't know if the first Khalifa is someone I'm supposed to have a problem with what he did or he's a hero? If I'm being very blunt, right? That's what it comes down to at the end of the day, right? Why should I put my children in that situation? Again, this is not to say it's not valid. No, nobody has the right to say this marriage is not valid. It is valid. We're just talking about preference, right? Preference, it's not, I personally, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't push for it. I won't say, oh, it's wonderful, go for it. Yes? But at the end of the day, if someone decides to make that decision, it's a valid marriage in Islam. It's a valid marriage. And so neither I, nobody else has the right to say this is not a valid marriage. It's a valid marriage. You had that question? We'll come to the brother afterwards. I thought he was going to recite something. Yeah. He got ready to recite. Yeah.
So the kid actually asked this recently, and I think I have an answer. He wasn't like dumb. He was like, so he said, how do you? He said, if Allah say, and wisdom that you will not, you will have enough, then why did you go? How do you answer to a child?
That's really good. The way to explain it is this. You say Imam Hussain knew he was going to go there. He knew he was going to get killed with his family and women and children, but he wanted to show people how evil Muslim leaders had become. And the only way to show this was to go there and ask for water, and they would deprive him even of water. So it was Imam Hussain trying to paint a picture for us of how terrible this ummah has become. When you look at that picture and it is so difficult to digest that they're not giving a child water, you know, it shocks you. You're like, oh my God, how bad have things become? That shock is what Imam Hussain was trying to create.
Recent issue that raised defending wedding ceremonies that bird on the line. We understand that but sometimes neither is applied. Either there's a separation or there's two people very properly. Like the question really comes down to what's the ruling from the law? Is it not allowed or is it or what's that rule?
It's great questions. The question is on weddings or any gathering really where there's haram happening. And what's the ruling? What if it's a close relative of mine? Well, the general ruling, the default ruling is don't go. But well, in order to discuss it in a more practical way, we'll say it's a close relative, I have to go. I don't know, it's someone, if I don't go, it's going to become this thing in the family, all this kind of stuff. So the Marajas say, listen, if you have to go for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the case might be, just to show that you came and you showed up and then you get up and leave, that's okay, as long as your presence is not considered a form of supporting what's happening, right? And if you get up and leave in the middle, usually people won't have that understanding. In fact, they'll have the other understanding that, you know what, he wasn't comfortable with the situation. That's why he got up and left. So if you have to go, that's something you can do. If there's music on, I'll just say you just don't listen. You will hear this music. If people, their hijab is not proper, then you just, lower your gaze and you do your thing. If it's absolutely necessary for you to go. If it's not necessary, no, you don't go. At the end, it's a gathering of sin. It's better not for you to go, right? But if you have to go, then you can do this. We used to go to weddings in Iran with relatives. We're like, okay, we're going to come, but we'll come at the beginning before, things pick up. So we used to go for we used to get dressed and everything for like a 20-minute thing. And then we go for 20 minutes and then we leave. And then the actual party would start. So yeah, just something like that at the end of the day. And hey, if you feel like they won't be super upset if you don't show up, you don't have to go. Don't go at all. Yeah. Yeah, it seems as though you can attend, but you just do it in a way where sometimes people say, oh, he's the religious one and he's here, so it's okay. Right? So you have to make sure that doesn't happen. He has a question. Thank you. So your question is, if someone invites you to a happy gathering soon after the morning of Imam Hussain. Like when you say soon after, what do you mean? It's a good question. The answer is this. The rulings that we have in Islam is you can't do something that people sit there and say, you know what? He's disrespecting Imam Hussain. What is that? Different cultures will have a different perspective on it. So it's a bit of a subjective thing. Let me share with you the Iranian culture. In the Iranian culture, there is no such a thing as 2 months and 9 days. It's just our culture, just in our culture, yes? Yes, from Ashra when it starts until Arba'in, it's like, you have majalis and all that kind of stuff. Usually when Arba'in comes, things sort of end in terms of the majalis, okay? Then goes until 28th of Safar. And 28th of Safar, again, there's majalis and all that kind of stuff. So in our culture, it's, they usually won't have a wedding during that time, right? But, if it's just like a family gathering, for example, they'll have it. And in our culture, it's completely understood. This is not even a problem. It's completely normal. So a lot of the things that, hold true in one culture don't necessarily hold true in another culture, right? So the answer to your question is, if you do something, attend the gathering, whatever the case might be, but it's to the extent that people say this person is disrespecting these special days, then it's a problem. If it doesn't reach that point, then no, there's no problem in it. And I will say, of course, that usually in some cultures, we are a bit sensitive about this issue. So you have to keep culture in mind here. You have to keep culture in mind here. But if it doesn't reach the point where people say, you know what, this person is being disrespectful to Imam Hussain, if it doesn't reach that point, it's not haram. It's better not to do, but it's not haram. You want to add a point? Yeah.
Where the expectation is society-wide.
Yeah.
As to what is considered disrespectful.
Yeah.
The problem would be, but when you're in the West here, the rules are all,
Yeah.
it's hard to try to figure out what's disrespectful.
Exactly. So when you have a doubt, is this something that would fall under this category or not? You can take the easy route out because you don't know if this is considered disrespectful. So it's okay. I mean, it's better not to do it, but I'm just saying, technically you can go, yes, if you know for a fact you're doing something, the general public, the general culture that you live in would say this person is being disrespectful to the mourning days. Then yes, if someone's having a wedding, on, I don't know, in or a family gathering where they're sitting and they're laughing and everything in Ashra, okay, this is definitely disrespectful. Yes, so it's definitely haram. Because it's difficult to tell in areas where it's a gray area, better not to do, but technically you can do it. If I'm just explaining the red lines, better not to do, but you can do it. Yeah. One of the guys had a question, I think. Yasmin says salam. Assalamu alaikum. She loves Allah. Thank you so much, Yasmin. I really appreciate it.
First of all, I want to say thank you. We took a
No
lot
problem.
of your time was respected. So thank you so much for time. Inshallah, we'll be ending our program. I just want to say thank you everyone for coming out. Inshallah, we'll have the last program tomorrow night. Also have cookies as well. So we can snap if you want to for that. If you do so. So one last thing, we have about 50 shirts left. We got some free sizes and a few adult sizes. So if you want to buy one, we will be up here. So just come to us. Inshallah. You can have a shirt. Say the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
No problem, no problem. Yeah, it's always tricky.